Okay, making a quick transition from the women's college basketball tournament to the men's. Um, Quite frankly, the men's tournament was a lot more entertaining this year than it was for me last year. I so like la- I don't know what it was, but like I didn't watch the national championship game last year. I think it was UConn and San Diego State. A little bit about the um the men's this year, I think, was just kind of honestly the women's. I have this this weird feeling that like the women's like having so much success kind of helped the men's a little bit. You had, storylines, right? Purdue was a 1 seed last year, lost to a 16 seed. Zach Edey was National Player of the Year, National Player of the Year again this year. 7-3 or 7-4 or whatever he is. He's huge. Um, Then you had UConn, who's going for the repeat. They were a 4 seed last year, number one overall seed this year, betting favorite by far, as was like the South Carolina girls, betting favorite. And you had North Carolina trying to get back to the Final Four. After 2 years ago's run, they were an 8 or a 9 seed. You had Arizona, who had Caleb Love, the transfer from North Carolina after a disappointing year last year. They were in the same bracket. They were the 1 and 2 seeds in that bracket. So of course there was that storyline, like we talked about, or like we'll talk about later with John Calipari, and Kentucky losing in the first round. We had NC State from Raleigh had to beat Duke, another team from the Triangle, to get to the Final Four. After beating Duke just a couple weeks prior in the ACC tournament to get to, I guess, the ACC semifinal, um, or the ACC final, whichever one, to play North Carolina. So NC State was, even though they're in a Power Five conference and even though they're a bigger program, they're like, you don't really look at them as a Cinderella, but they were kind of Cinderellaing, right? Then you had like, you know, Rick Pitino's team didn't make it, and like the noise that just so you had some stuff. It wasn't like it was completely um void of stories. But the thing about the men's game, as we've talked about before, is that when players don't stay very long, UConn's team lost 8 guys from last year, and they still repeat. Most of these teams don't have whoever started last year. A lot of them don't start this year, and they don't really. Again, it just goes back to the difference between the women's game. Iowa women's basketball fans got to see Caitlin Clark as a freshman and see what it became. Purdue Boilermaker fans did get to see that with Zach Edey, but for the most part, you don't. I think part of the popularity with Zach Edey is the fact that people knew him from last year, the year before, the story of him being a backup when he was in high school, and blah blah blah. You see his growth that you don't get from most of these programs. Um, a couple of things really to note. So just of the Final Four, you had, like I said, Cinderella NC State, who was doing something that was just, I mean, it was cool to see. Even though I'm a North Carolina fan, I do enjoy seeing these feel good stories. NC State needed something like this. And so, it's nice to see them get something for once, right? And it just kind of, at the end of the day, even if it's your rival, Carolina and Duke and NC State, if they're all relevant and they're all there, the Sweet 16, the ACC, all that stuff, it's nice to see. It is good for the Triangle. Um, and so, while of course we're not cheering for them to win, nor that I think they would, it was nice to see that they got something nice. It was good for them. It was good for them. So beating Duke to go to the Final Four, that like put their win streak at like 9 or something like that. It was nuts. 9 or 10 or 8 or something. And they had to play against Purdue. Zach Edey, like I said, 2-time National Player of the Year, back-to-back National Player of the Year. 1 seed. They were 1 seed last year, got knocked out first round. They were on the redemption tour. They're basically doing the same thing Virginia tried to do, or that Virginia succeeded in doing back in 2018, I believe it was. Um, Then you had on the other side of the bracket, you had Alabama, who nobody really expected, but they pulled off the upset over North Carolina in the Sweet 16. They just shoot threes and they just light it up against UConn, who everybody kind of had all year as the best team. All tournament they had been playing like the best team. But it was an intriguing matchup because 3-point shots really, really like they're the ultimate equalizer. If you're turning the ball over a lot, but you're hitting threes, you're in the game. If you're not making your layups, you're missing free throws, but you're hitting threes, you're in the game. It's just the ultimate equalizer because out of 10 possessions, let's say both of us score 8, but you shoot and score 8 twos and I score 8 threes, I'm up 8 points. But it's one of those things where threes, I mean, that's where the analytics come in. Threes count more than twos, and this is why the Warriors being successful and everybody wants to copy and blah, blah, blah. That's why 3-and-D basketball players are so valuable because at the end of the day, I'd rather shoot a 3 than a mid-range 2. All the stuff. And Alabama can shoot threes. They can shoot at a high clip. They play hard. They play tough. And so they did just that in their matchup with UConn. They, very similar to the South Carolina girls. I mean, there were a lot of things that echoed and mimicked each other in these two tournaments. UConn was inevitable, right? So they play Alabama. The game is close. Alabama's shooting threes, but just eventually just chip away, chip away. UConn's got the 7-footer clinging in the middle who just kind of really just takes up a ton of space. And they're just the better team. It's hard because like I like to get into the weeds and really analyze this stuff, but sometimes there's just not a lot to analyze. It's the same thing with NC State and Purdue in the other semifinal. There's not a lot to analyze. DJ Burns had been having a great tournament. He's had a great month of March / April, I guess, technically. But this shit, Zach Edey 7-4, right? Like, it's hard. It's hard to win these games. You wonder if some of it was a little bit of legs, not having enough in the tank, right? Because of the like how much NC State's had to play. You wonder if it's just talent, and you wonder if Purdue's a little more rested. Whatever the case is, it better team wins, and so you get UConn and Purdue. Now, that one I wanted to break down a little bit more. I thought it would be an intriguing matchup. You had the big man, Edey. You had another big man. Probably the first matchup he had all tournament with somebody who might not be exactly his size, but, it's 7-4 versus 7-1, right? 7-2, whatever it is. And I thought early they battled. I thought that it was a lot of banging early. It's hard to stay out of foul trouble against a guy like Edey. Edey seems very good with, like, his hands, and just like he's really crafty with maybe getting you in a compromising position before he even gets the ball. That makes it kind of look like you're fouling if you were. And I saw a lot of times where arms would get tangled up, and Clingan was pleading with the refs, like, guys, he's grabbing me. Edey loves the right hook, but the problem was, well, I won't say the problem, but the game plan for UConn was, okay, look, if he goes 1-on-1 and scores 35 points, that's fine, because if he only has 1 assist or 2 assists and Purdue's not making threes, they're not going to be able to score. So when the game ends and Purdue had 60 points and Edey had 37, game plan worked to a T. That was exactly what it was. We're not going to let Braden Smith or any of the other guys get going because Edey's only going to kill us with twos. All right, we'll just lock in, chip away. It never really felt like, while the game was close, right? 36-30 at halftime. While the game was always close, it never really felt like it was out of UConn's control. It always kind of felt like, all right, like UConn's up 6, but it just feels like 8. And UConn, all of a sudden, you look up, they're up 9. They start the half on like a 7-2 run or whatever it was, 7-4, something like that. So now they're up 9, then they're up 10, then they're up 12. You look down, you look back up, oh, wow, they're up 16. And it's just, they're well coached. They're huge at the guard spot. I think it started 2. One guard 6'6", another guard 6'5", freshman. They got 6'4" forward. And, of course, they got the 7'1" guy. Like, they're just well coached. They're big. I love their sets. It's a lot of movement, a lot of screening. off ball screen. The big man holds the ball, and everybody he kind of sets the screen while holding the ball until they just find the right thing. It's like they just keep moving until they find, okay, this is the good pass, and then they do more stuff. And all right, well, this is the good, and it's just an action off an action off an action off an action. I like how they move the ball. As for Purdue, while they don't necessarily move the ball the same, I was cool with just kind of what they had going on. Um, so yeah, it was clash of styles make fights. Styles make fights. It was a clash of styles, um, and of course, like I said, Houston kind of just very similar to South Carolina girls was inevitable. It'll be very interesting to see what happens um, with coaches and recruits and transfers and all that stuff. But UConn's got, I want to say, 6 championships now. If last year the conversation after they won was, are they a blue blood? Blah blah blah. I don't know if that's really even a conversation at this point. They're definitely, if you're gonna, because I guess the question is who are the blue bloods, right? North Carolina, Duke, Kansas, Kentucky. But I want to say that like Indiana, because of their history, is supposed to be, because blue blood isn't just about like, oh, because they wear the color blue. Like it works for those 4 programs I just named. But then like Indiana, I think was a blue blood, and now like UConn. I mean, they got a lot of championships. Just in my day and age, I saw Calhoun win one. I saw Kevin Ollie win one. I was seeing Dan Hurley win 2. And I feel like somebody else won one, but that might have been Villanova, maybe, who I'm thinking of, Jay Wright. But that's at least 4. I mean, is UConn a blue blood? Can you look at you? I mean, you obviously can't compare them to, like Duke, but or I'm sorry, you obviously can't compare them to like I don't know. Like I feel like maybe they're a blue blood of this generation of the last 20 years or so. I don't know if I'd call them a all time blue blood, but I mean, again, what's the metric? If the metric is just wins, whether they did it in the last 20 years or did it in the previous 80, right? What's Indiana done in the last 20 years? What's like I mentioned earlier, I thought Bill Self was a little overrated, but he's got 2. He's got 2 chips. Was Carolina done? I mean, Kentucky done? They got 1 in 2012. I don't know when the last one was before that. So I mean, hey, maybe the definition of blue bloods changes. Maybe who knows? Honestly, I quite frankly don't really give a damn too much about the blue blood conversation. Back to this, because congratulations to Kentucky. They did it. I mean, I keep saying that. UConn, Connecticut. That's a great win. They were the best team. It reminds me of North Carolina's win in 2009, I believe, where they like won every game by like double-digit points or something. I think UConn won every game. First team to win back-to-back by at least 13 points, both championships. I think UConn won every game by at least 13 in this tournament. They won 12 straight by double digits, or by 13, something like that. I mean, it's just dominant. And Dan Hurley recruits the right kind of guys for his program, guys who are NBA talents, but also aren't necessarily driven solely by the NBA. So he found that nice like balance there. And I mean, hey, power to him. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the nature of it when you're playing the transfer game. Dan Hurley didn't have to play the transfer game. I mean, he don't get me wrong, he's got transfers, but he's kind of playing a different game, and he's having all the success. More power to him, man. South Carolina girls, UConn boys. We'll see we'll see who's got what coming up next. It should be interesting. And now, as far as basketball is concerned, we're gonna pivot to the NBA as it's time, for the NBA playoffs. My bracket was trash. My bracket was not good. So that yeah, I was in a bracket challenge. I don't do a lot of brackets. I used to do like 10 of them. Right. Last year I didn't even do one. That kind of goes back to my like, not really interested. Now with like DraftKings and like all the gambling in North Carolina, it makes people a little bit more interested that might not have been prior. But like I did one in like a league with some guys, and I think only like 14 people submitted, and I'm pretty sure I was like 10th. Like my bracket was not good. Has never really been good. I think the best year I've ever had, I finished like third in one. And that only in every year, part of that is because I picked North Carolina to win championship. If I think, oh well, maybe there's a shot, I just go ahead and pick them. But like I said before, or like I've said before, I never thought North Carolina had a chance to really win this year. Um, Not with UConn, not with Purdue, not even with Arizona, Tennessee's. Like those were good teams. I think they were better teams. But like I said, March Madness, better team to have to win. You just gotta have enough talent. Carolina's got enough talent, and so you just pick them. But when they lose in the Sweet 16, that kind of kills your bracket there. So you know, whatever. March Madness, it was cool. Interested to see if the men's tournament breaks the 18.3. I think last year's tournament, UConn and San Diego State did 14.9 million viewers. So we'll see what the men's does. I know the girls, came in at 18.7, I believe, which is nuts. So we'll see what the men's does. I'm interested to see those metrics, but congratulations to UConn, man. That's that back to back is hard to do. I haven't seen it since Billy Donovan did it with Florida, Joakim Noah, Al Horford, Corey Brewer, and them. So kudos to them, man. That's and it's good basketball. It's not hard to watch. It's good basketball. They did the damn thing.